Closer look at the tabling of the political funding bill in the next parliament session. Analysts say bill must be comprehensive and not rushed. That and more coming up. The floods that hit Baling district in Kedah July this year resulted in losses estimated at 28 million ringgit. Menteri Besar Datuk Seri Muhammad Sanusi Mat Noor said losses involve destruction of houses, infrastructures, vehicles and other properties. The estimate from the first flood incident on 4th of July was carried out by the Disaster Operations Control Centre Committee set up by the Baling District Office. A total of 41 areas were affected in the floods and 3 people died. Sanusi said that the total losses incurred for the second flood incident on July 28th have yet to be received. He added that the process of land reclamation to transfer 17 houses in the yellow zone along Sungai Kupang had already begun. A total of 600 residents have been evacuated from several areas in Sri Gading, Batu Pahat. This is after their homes were hit by flash floods in the early hours of today.
The flash floods in Sri Gading were caused by heavy rainfall, which lasted 4 hours, combined with high tide. This led to overflowing rivers affecting low-lying areas in the area. The victims, consisting of 190 families, have been brought to a temporary evacuation centre at SMK Sri Gading. No injuries or fatalities have been recorded so far. Authorities say efforts to evacuate other victims are ongoing, but all main roads connecting Batu Pahat with other nearby districts are still open to all vehicles.
The Malaysian Armed Forces plans to increase its security posts along the borders of Sabah and Sarawak. It follows Indonesia's decision to relocate its capital from Jakarta to Kalimantan. Chief of the Defence Force General Tan Sri Afandi Buang said enhancements in border security is to be done in stages. The armed forces also plans to beef up surveillance of the country's border control, either manually or through systematic methods, involving the use of sensors and drones. Indonesia's relocation of its capital to a new city named Nusantara is expected to take place in 2024. Afandi said the relocation would increase the number of residents and economic sectors in the area, which could contribute to a rise in cross-border crimes such as smuggling. Malaysia, he said, would cooperate with the Indonesian National Armed Forces on the matter of border control. UOB Malaysia and Citi Malaysia have received regulatory approval from Bank Negara for UOB's acquisition of Citi's consumer banking business in Malaysia. In a joint statement, it said, following the approval, UOB Malaysia and Citi Malaysia would apply for a vesting order from the High Court to transfer Citi's consumer banking assets and liabilities to UOB Malaysia. The transaction is expected to be completed by the 4th quarter of 2022. Upon completion, all of Citi Malaysia's retail banking and consumer credit card businesses will be transferred to UOB Malaysia. All related Citi Malaysia Consumer Bank employees and its supporting employees are also expected to transfer to UOB Malaysia. In January this year, Citigroup announced it agreed to sell its consumer business in 4 Southeast Asian markets, including Indonesia, Thailand and Vietnam, to Singapore's UOB for around $3.7 billion, as the US bank seeks to exit its retail operations in 13 markets. The tabling of the political funding bill in Parliament should not be rushed. Political analyst Dr. Wong Chin Huat said it is important for the bill to be drafted in a prudent way to avoid any potential abuse by political parties in the future.
The timetable announced by the de facto law minister, Datuk Sri Wan Junaidi, the government bill on this would be tabled on the 3rd week of October, and then for first reading, and then expected to be passed for second reading 2 to 3 weeks later. So that's in November. But I think there are issues with such a rush. Reason being that this political finance bill, while it is very good and very necessary, they are always concerned whether this would be abused as a way to check on the oppositions, as similar laws in other countries like Singapore have been accused of having such impact. And so that come back to say, how do we have that bill drafted in very prudent way and effective?
Chin Huat also stressed the importance of public funding to ensure political parties would not resort to corruption when campaigning.
Question is that how effective and comprehensive that bill is. And I would take this opportunity to call on the Prime Minister to ensure that the government bill would have public funding for the parties. Why? Because that this is the only way that UMNO can prevent itself from getting into another 1MDB scandal. 1MDB scandal was meant to get money for UMNO to run in the 13th general elections because there was no public funding. So when the party cannot have a legitimate way to get monies to run in elections, they will look for other ways. And so if UMNO really want to break with 1MDB, UMNO must push for public funding for political parties. And we are not talking about huge amount. If we can allocate about 0.5% of our budget, we are talking about here 120 million. That would be able to give Barisan Nasional somewhere around 38 millions to run. And that would not cover everything, but it would be better than nothing. And so we then can ensure parties have the options of not depending on corrupt money.
We will go for a quick break. Stay tuned.
Ingin tahu bagaimana konsultan Unify Business boleh membantu Cindy kembangkan perniagaannya?
Jom Unify Business.
Ya, lihat bagaimana perniagaannya berkembang daripada sebuah kedai sehingga menjadi kedai pilihan ramai dengan penyelesaian perniagaan Unify. Transformasikan perniagaan dengan Unify Business, rakan digital pilihan anda. Hubungi kami sekarang dan jimat sehingga 50%. Jom Unify Business.
Aku tak sakit.
Kita ni semua harapan dia orang. Do not give up.
Kita akan bawa seramai 113 warga negara Malaysia. Saya tak mahu satu kapal terbang dengan dia.
Welcome back. Contingent workforce, where people are hired for a fixed amount of time or on a project basis, could be the model of future work. CEO of HR solution company CXL, Faris Abdullah, explains how employers and job seekers could tap into the full potential of this work arrangement.
The job market, if you realize in the recent surveys that have been coming out, almost 60% of the organizations in Malaysia are already looking into contingency workforce. So the job market is actually ready. What is not ready is the job seeker itself, because people are not used to doing the contingency workforce. They prefer the full-time because they feel that they get a job security when they have a full-time job. What they fail to understand is once they get into the flow of doing contingency workforce, they will continuously start getting different roles almost every other week or every other month. You know, those are the short term, and the long term one, they probably get renewed every 2 years or 1 year, right? So the job market wise, it is there. Jobs are available in the market. It's just that the job seekers has to now slowly figure out how do they want to get into it.
With flexible work options becoming more and more important to job seekers, Faris says a contingent workforce could ease the labour crunch facing certain industries.
One is because they want flexibility and they want immediate earning, right? So that's something they go into. So if you look at gig workers, there are also roles which give them that, the flexibility and earning immediately. If you look at taking short-term jobs like 1 week, 2 weeks, The moment you finish your job within the next few days, you will get your earnings. You don't have to work for the one whole month for it, right? So that is why they do cross-line. One of the things we realize in terms of gig workers, right? In Malaysia, they tend to put them all as food delivery and Grab drivers, right? But in the actual fact, if you look at it, gig workers are much bigger than that. They are even finance managers, engineers, those kind of positions are also being parked as gig workers. For an example, if you look at the creative industry, there are a lot of designers who are gig workers, right? So that's something that I think a lot of organizations have to open their mind and start looking at it properly in that sense. And it's not only the low-end jobs. Every other job can be now go into contingency workforce.
China's Zhejiang province upgraded its typhoon emergency response to the highest level in anticipation for Muifa, one of the strongest typhoons of 2022. According to forecasters, the country's 12th cyclone of the year is expected to make landfall tonight, bringing torrential rains.
Authorities have already issued a red warning for flash floods in several areas. Making its way from southern Japan, the typhoon will sweep through the eastern and southern coastal areas of China. This includes the commercial hub of Shanghai, where waves of up to 5 meters are expected near the financial hub, as well as the key port cities of Ningbo and Zhoushan. Shanghai has halted all operations of its port and cancelled flights for the day. Meanwhile, about 13,000 people from islands and tourist sites located in the typhoon's path have been evacuated.
A Thai soldier killed 2 people and wounded another in a shooting at a military facility in Bangkok today. The cause and motivation for the attack is still under investigation. Sergeant Major Yongyut Mungkon Kim, a clerk at the Royal Thai Army War College, shot 3 other soldiers around 8:45 a.m. local time. Now, according to Bangkok Post, the shooter was said to be mentally ill and threatened to kill 10 people. The 59-year-old tried to flee the scene but surrendered himself around 10 a.m. Initial reports suggested that the weapon he used was a 9mm pistol. The injured soldier was taken to hospital for treatment. South Korea has fined Google and Meta more than $71 million collectively for privacy law violations, the highest ever fine on data protection in the country. Regulators said the platforms had been gathering users' personal information without consent, among other allegations.
Regulators said the majority of the users in South Korea, 82% for Google and 98% for Meta, had unknowingly allowed them to collect data on their online use, and that the data had been used to infer their interests or for customized advertisements. In a statement, the Personal Information Protection Commission said it fined Google $50 million and Facebook parent company Meta $22 million. Last year, South Korea fined Google nearly $180 million for abusing its dominance in the mobile operating systems and app markets, saying it was hampering market competition.
The Selangor government is once again in the middle of another forest reserve dispute, this time with the degazetment of Bukit Chiraka. On Consider This, we ask our guests if Bukit Chiraka can still be saved. And that is all we have for you on AWANI Tonight. I'm Cynthia Ng. Thank you for watching.
Time goes by like clouds in the sky. Don't close your eyes, you miss it all.